You did not land here by mistake. You arrived at this moment because something within you is stirring. A quiet longing. A whisper beneath the noise. Something deeper than your daily thoughts is trying to reach you, and you finally started to listen. Maybe life has felt uncertain lately. Maybe the dreams you once held so tightly have begun to fade. Maybe you're waking up each day with a strange sense that something is shifting, but you can't quite explain what or why. You're not alone. In fact, this very feeling, this strange inner tremble, is often the first sign of a sacred transformation. There comes a time in every soul's journey when the familiar no longer fits. When the roles, beliefs, and expectations that once held us together start to feel too tight, too heavy, or simply untrue. And though it may feel like something is falling apart, the truth is more powerful. Something within you is breaking open. Carl Jung wrote often about the soul's quiet revolutions. He knew that the path to wholeness does not begin with achievement or approval. It begins with dissonance, with discomfort, with the feeling that you can no longer pretend. And from that moment, the real journey begins, not outward, but inward. This is not a breakdown, it is a breakthrough. Not an ending, but an invitation. And it's calling you not to become someone new, but to return to who you've always been, before the world told you who to be. What follows is a deep remembering, a sacred realignment. 7 signs that your soul is awakening, that your life isn't unraveling. It's reorganizing itself to make space for your most authentic self to rise. And if even one of these signs speaks to you, then something inside you already knows. You are ready. Let's begin. 1. You start to feel discomfort in the life you once chose. It begins quietly, not with drama. Not with lightning, but with a subtle restlessness you can't explain. You wake up and something feels off. Not wrong, just different. You go through the same motions, your job, your relationships, your routines, and on the surface, everything looks fine. But inside, something is shifting. The life you built, the choices you made years ago, no longer bring the same peace they once did. The excitement has faded. The comfort now feels like confinement. And you begin to wonder, is this truly my life, or just the version I thought I was supposed to live? This is the first sign. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are awakening. Carl Jung believed that the psyche sends signals when we have outgrown old versions of ourselves. It doesn't yell, it whispers. Through boredom, through fatigue, through the dull ache of a life that no longer lights you up. It is the soul's way of calling you home. Maybe you feel it at work. A job that once fulfilled you now feels mechanical. Or in a relationship that no longer nourishes your heart. Or perhaps you simply feel like a stranger in your own skin, as if the life around you was meant for someone else. This is sacred discomfort. It's the moment before the chrysalis cracks. It's your spirit letting you know, there is more for you. Not more to do, but more to become. And yes, this can be painful. You might feel guilt. After all, didn't you choose this path? Didn't it once make you happy? But you are not who you were, and what once served your growth may now be limiting it. This tension is not a problem to solve. It's a signpost, a gentle nudge inward. It's the voice of your deeper self asking, what else is possible for me now? When you stop numbing that discomfort, when you stop running from it, you begin to hear its wisdom. You begin to realize that your life is not collapsing. It's just rearranging itself around a new truth. This is the first crack in the shell. The first breath after holding it for years. The beginning of a journey that doesn't lead away from you, but back to you. Don't ignore this feeling. Let it speak. Let it stir. It's not here to ruin your life. It's here to reveal your real one. 2. You no longer fit into old roles, and you know it. There comes a moment when the mask begins to slip. Not because you want to rebel, but because you can no longer pretend. The roles you once wore so well, the people pleaser, the fixer, the achiever, start to feel like costumes. Costumes you've worn for so long that you almost forgot you were acting. You notice it in small moments. The laughter that feels forced, the conversations that no longer resonate, the smile that hides the quiet ache of disconnection. And then it hits you. You don't fit here anymore. It's not just about other people. It's about who you've been for them. The daughter who always says yes, the friend who never asks for anything, the partner who swallows her truth to keep the peace. These identities once gave you structure, even a sense of purpose, but now they feel like cages. This is not selfishness. This is awakening. You are not abandoning your life. You are reclaiming yourself. Carl Jung spoke often about the persona, the public mask we wear to navigate the world. It's not inherently bad. It serves a purpose. But when the mask becomes the identity, the soul begins to suffocate. You feel this now. The quiet discontent. The deep knowing that what once felt like connection now feels like compromise. You begin to say less, not because you're shutting down, but because shallow talk drains you. You begin to pull back, not out of bitterness, but because you're making space. Space for truth, for alignment, for something real. This is where the shift deepens. You stop playing parts. You stop shrinking to fit someone else's story. You start asking harder questions. Who am I when I'm not performing? At first, this can feel lonely, like you're losing yourself. But you're not. You're peeling away the layers that were never really you. You may notice that certain friendships fade, that invitations stop coming, that some people don't know how to relate to the quieter, clearer version of you. Let them go. Not in anger, but in peace. They were companions for who you were, but you are becoming someone new. And with that becoming, a new kind of connection will arise. One built not on duty, but on authenticity. Not on performance, but on presence. This detachment is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. You are not lost. You are being found. So honor the shedding. Let the roles fall away. Not because they were wrong, but because you're finally ready to be more than what the world expected of you. You are not here to wear a mask. You are here to become whole. 3. You begin to see through what once controlled you. There is a moment when the veil lifts, not all at once, but slowly, steadily. And the things that once ruled you, fear, approval, status, old wounds, begin to lose their power. You start to notice patterns. How often you said yes when you meant no. How much of your life was built around being liked. How deeply you chased success not for joy, but to feel enough. You see it clearly now, not with shame, but with awakening. It's like walking into a room you've always lived in, only now the lights are finally on. You see the strings, the systems, the unconscious beliefs that guided your every move. And in that clarity, you begin to understand. What once felt like choice was often survival. Carl Jung taught that we are all shaped by the unconscious, by archetypes, inherited stories, and buried fears. And unless we bring those into the light, they rule us. But once we see them, we reclaim our freedom. This part of the journey is sobering. You might realize that your career path was never truly yours, that the way you love was molded by what you lacked, that your definition of success was someone else's idea of worth. And yet, there is no regret, only truth. You begin to forgive yourself for not knowing sooner. You realize that you were never weak, just unaware. And now, your awareness is changing everything. You stop performing for applause that never fed your soul. You stop chasing perfection that was never achievable. You stop giving energy to things that once drained you quietly. You begin to choose differently, not out of rebellion, but out of reverence. You make space for silence instead of noise, depth instead of drama, meaning instead of approval. You may feel disoriented, even raw. Because without the old motivators, who are you? But this space is sacred. This is where you begin to live by a new compass, your own. You don't need to control everything anymore. You don't need to prove yourself constantly. You don't need to be anything other than true. The world will still offer you the old roles, the old rewards, the old mirrors. But something in you has shifted. You see through them now. And once you see, you cannot unsee. You are not a puppet of the past. You are not a reflection of others' desires. You are the witness, the chooser, the one who sees, and therefore, the one who is free. Forster 4. You feel pulled toward solitude and simplicity. There comes a time when noise begins to feel unbearable. Not just external noise, the buzzing of daily life, the endless demands, the clutter of conversations, but also the internal kind, the overthinking, the chasing, the constant narrating in your head. And so, without fanfare, you begin to crave something else. Stillness, simplicity, silence. At first it might feel like withdrawal. You cancel plans. You don't return messages right away. You sit longer in the morning light. You stare out the window without guilt. And in those moments, something unexpected happens. You begin to hear yourself. Carl Jung said that solitude is not about being alone. It's about being with the self, not the roles, not the masks, but the deep sacred being beneath it all. And now you are finally making room for that presence to speak. You start letting go of what is not essential. Cluttered schedules, empty conversations, performances for approval. You are no longer seduced by more. You are drawn to what is real. Maybe you find yourself going for long walks without music, cooking slower, sitting in quiet spaces without needing to fill the air. You feel the richness and simplicity. You find beauty in the ordinary. This is not laziness. It is restoration. It is the nervous system unwinding. It is the spirit exhaling after years of holding its breath. You might notice a shift in what you consume. Books over screens, nature over noise, depth over speed. You are becoming selective, not because you are closing off, but because you are tuning in. The world might not understand this at first. People may ask if something is wrong, why you're so quiet, why you're not as present as before. But what they don't see is that you are more present now than you've ever been. You are present with your truth, your body, your breath, your soul. And in this gentle quiet, you begin to notice something profound. Peace, not the kind that depends on everything being perfect, but the kind that rises from within, simply because you've stopped running. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify your need for space. You are allowed to become simple. To step back, to slow down. In fact, this might be the most radical act of your transformation. Because in a world that rewards urgency and performance, choosing presence is power. So trust the pull. Honor the solitude. Simplify, not because life is small, but because your soul is learning to breathe again. This is not isolation. This is intimacy. With life, with self, with the sacred unfolding of who you truly are. 5. You no longer need to be understood to feel at peace. Here comes a moment when you stop explaining yourself. Not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but because peace no longer requires permission. You begin to realize that not everyone will understand your path, and that is okay. They don't need to. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. At one time, you might have tried to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as reasonable, agreeable, normal. You bent your truth to avoid discomfort. You edited your feelings to fit someone else's comfort zone. You played small to stay safe. But now, something inside you has shifted. You no longer need validation to feel grounded. You no longer seek agreement to trust your decisions. You have outgrown the need to be understood in order to feel whole. Carl Jung said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to share the parts of ourselves that matter most. And yet sometimes the greatest gift is not in being heard, but in learning to listen inward without needing approval. You've likely noticed that as you grow, some people fade. It's not personal, it's energetic. Your vibration shifts, and what once matched no longer resonates. Some people won't understand your silence, your new boundaries. Your shift in energy. Let them. You're not rejecting them. You're honoring you. This part of the journey can feel lonely at first, not because you're disconnected, but because you're finally connecting to something deeper. Yourself. You begin to see the freedom in not needing to prove your growth. You begin to realize that peace isn't something others give you. It's something you return to. It's your birthright, your home. You stop trying to fix misunderstandings that are rooted in someone else's lens. You stop chasing explanations that drain your spirit. You start choosing what feels right, even if it makes no sense to anyone but you. And something magical happens. Your nervous system settles. Your energy shifts. Your spirit softens. You begin to feel free. This is a new kind of strength. The kind that doesn't argue, but simply stands. The kind that doesn't need to shout because it knows its truth. You are not responsible for others' perceptions. You are responsible for your own alignment. And that alignment, that quiet inner knowing, is more valuable than approval could ever be. So if you find yourself speaking less and listening more, if you find yourself choosing solitude over performance, if you feel peace in your body even when others question your choices, you're not distant. You're becoming whole. And this, more than anything, is a sign that you're coming home to yourself. 6. You become unafraid to let go of what no longer resonates. Letting go used to feel like loss. Now it feels like truth. There's a shift that happens when your soul becomes more important than your attachments. The old fears that once clung to familiarity, even when it hurt, begin to loosen. And you no longer feel afraid to release what no longer aligns. This isn't recklessness, it's clarity. You begin to see that not everything meant to stay forever. Jobs, friendships, old dreams, habits you once called comfort but now recognize as cages. And so slowly, gracefully, or maybe all at once, you begin to let go. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation as a shedding of the false self, not a destruction, but a refinement. A burning away of what no longer serves the soul's becoming. And you feel that now. You no longer feel the need to force what resists. You no longer convince yourself that staying in misalignment is noble. You don't blame. You don't resent. You simply bless the experience and move on. This is freedom, the kind that arises not from escape, but from truth. At this stage, letting go doesn't feel violent. It feels sacred. You begin to sense what resonates and what repels, what expands your spirit and what dims it. You trust the feeling more than the logic. You no longer override your intuition for convenience. And even when your mind protests, but we've known them so long, or you've worked so hard for this, something deeper says, it's okay, you're allowed to leave. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to end things that no longer reflect who you are becoming. Sometimes it's a quiet goodbye, a change in rhythm, a phone that rings less often. Other times it's a deep rupture, a boundary drawn in trembling clarity. But in every case, it is not the end of love. It is the honoring of growth. You understand now that holding on out of guilt is not love, that staying small to keep others comfortable is not loyalty, that pretending to be unchanged is not kindness. And so, you let go, not because you've hardened, but because you've softened into the truth of what your soul needs. There is grief in this. Of course, grief for what once mattered, for who you once were. But this grief is sacred. It clears space. And in that space, something new can rise. You no longer fear release. You welcome it. not with coldness, but with reverence. Because you trust now that anything meant for your highest good will not require you to betray yourself to keep it, so let it fall away. What no longer resonates is not being taken from you. It is being removed for you, so that what belongs to your next chapter can finally find its way in. 7. You begin to feel a deeper connection to something greater. There comes a moment when you no longer feel alone, even when you are by yourself. Something unseen begins to accompany you, a quiet presence, a gentle guidance. A sacred knowing that you are part of something far larger than your thoughts, your past, your plans. You start to notice beauty in places you used to overlook. The way sunlight touches the wall, the silence between raindrops, the exact timing of a stranger's smile when you needed it most. These are not coincidences. They are reminders. Your heart begins to expand in stillness. You feel connected, not to a belief system or an institution, but to life itself. To the breath in your body, to the earth beneath your feet, to the invisible thread that has carried you here, even through all the storms. Carl Jung believed that the soul was always moving us toward wholeness, and that the longing we feel is not for answers, but for alignment, for reunion with the sacred center within. And you feel that now. You no longer pray from desperation. You pray from devotion. Not always with words, but with awareness. Your very presence becomes your offering. You sense that something is watching over you. Not judging, not controlling, just witnessing. Holding, loving you forward. You begin to understand that the universe is not outside of you. It lives within you. It speaks through intuition, through dreams, through the soft tug of your heart. You might not have a name for it. God. Source, the divine. Stillness. But whatever you call it, you know it now, not as a concept, but as a lived truth. You stop needing proof. You start trusting presence. There's a humility that grows here. You no longer need to control everything. You begin to surrender, not in weakness, but in reverence. You understand now, you were never alone. You were always being led. Even in your darkest seasons, something was guiding you. Even in your most painful goodbyes, something was preparing you. You feel this deeper connection, not as a theory, but as a quiet strength that carries you. You begin to walk through life differently. More slowly, more kindly, more open. And when fear comes, you don't collapse, you breathe, you remember. You return. This is not a belief you argue for. It is a truth you embody. You are not separate. You are not small. You are part of the great unfolding, and it has only just begun. If you've made it this far, something inside you already knows. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a deeper chapter, one that doesn't follow a map, but follows your truth. Maybe life hasn't made sense lately. Maybe you felt lost, untethered, uncertain. But what if that disorientation was the soul's way of guiding you inward? Not to punish you, but to invite you home. The signs have been there. In your discomfort, in your longing, in your quiet refusal to keep pretending. You are not breaking down. You are breaking free. You are not being asked to become someone new. You are being asked to return to who you've always been, before fear, before pressure, before expectation. This is the real transformation, not changing your appearance, not fixing your flaws, but meeting yourself without judgment. Carl Jung reminded us that wholeness is not perfection. It is integration. It is the weaving together of your shadow and your light, your wounds and your wisdom, your past and your potential. And that is what you're doing now. You are listening. You are shedding. You are opening. And most of all, you are remembering. Remembering that you are allowed to change, allowed to rest, allowed to heal, allowed to begin again. There will still be hard days, moments when you forget, moments when you doubt, But now you have a deeper compass. You have a quiet knowing. And that knowing will lead you. So be gentle with yourself. Honor the pace of your own unfolding. And trust that your life is not behind you. It is rising from within you, moment by sacred moment. You are not late. You are not lost. You are right on time for your own becoming. And if these words stirred something in you, it's because the next chapter of your soul is already waiting to be written. And this time, you will write it with your heart.